Hello Summoners and welcome back to another Pro Guides video. My name is Nathan Ing and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the worst champions going into patch 11.15. While there are a ton of buffs and nerfs for each patch, it can be pretty difficult to actually know what's going to change and what's going to stay the same. I mean, sometimes a seemingly huge nerf just really brings a god tier champion down to the S tier, and they are so plenty OP. Other times, it just seems like a minor 2 base AD reduction just causes a champion to fall off the rift. So we're here to steer you away from what we think are going to be the worst champions in each role this patch. We'll start things off in the top lane with Vladimir. Okay, this one might be a surprise to you, but he quite literally sucks, cause you know, he's a vampire. Okay, well he's not that bad and he's still a pretty solid pick in the mid lane, but you know, as a top laner, Vladimir just doesn't really stand a chance against the bruisers that dominate the role right now. He still technically has good teamfight scaling, but it just doesn't make up for how badly he loses both laning phase and the side lane against other picks. With no direct nerfs to the champions that sit in the S tier at the moment, nor the items that they build, that won't be changing that much on this patch. In fact, the only thing relevant to top lane is a buff to Hullbreaker, so really things will be getting just a little bit worse for Vladimir. Vladimir may be designed around his life leeching abilities, but early on he can just get outdamaged and outsustained by champions like Camille and Fiora. Life leeching. Reminds me of my ex. Anyway, 1v1s aside, he doesn't really have the priority to basically any matchup, so the other laners will always be able to move first to help their jungler in the river or for invades. Another top laner to stay away from is Gangplank. His issues are pretty similar to Vladimir. His weak early game means that he gets bullied by the more popular picks, and even though he does have insane scaling, DP's damage takes a bit of setup with his barrels. As a result, there's not really a point in the game where you can just really 1v1 the champions that are actually meant for dueling. He's also basically unplayable against ranged top laners. Kale's nerfs are only targeting her AP matchups, so when she's 6, she's still gonna be impossible for GP. And giving Kale a massive hyper carry of free lane is definitely not in your best interest to winning games. Okay, while Kennen doesn't also do well against gap-closing bruisers like Irelia, Camille, and Fiora, he does a really good job of bullying less mobile champions like GP. With Kennen being buffed, there's all the more reason to lock him in as yet another counter to the Pirate. With basically no good lanes and many other champions outscaling him in the current meta, you just can't really come up with any good reason to justify picking GP unless you really love playing him. I won't stop you. Looking now at the jungle, our first do not pick is Dr. Mundo. After his rework, we were excited to see the Madman of Zaun's new kit in action. Things started off really rough, with his win rates in both the top and jungle being in the 30s. But after some adjustments and people figuring some things out, things have shaped up for him in the top lane. But in the jungle, things aren't panning out like we had hoped. Even with the last round of buffs when he got more sustain and a much faster clear, he just can't really compete with the faster paced early game champions. And if your plan is to scale up with him, then there's just way more better options. Mundo AFK farming for 20 minutes has much less of an impact than a hyper-scaling champion like Fiddlesticks or Karthus. Again, I just want to make it clear, Mundo top is doing fine or even well. His kit itself is good, but he just doesn't offer that much as a jungler. Avoiding champions on this list is a good starting point to rank up, but if you're actually serious about climbing, you should check out ProGuides.com. We have courses from all of your favorite streamers and pros like Core JJ, Aframu, and X Smithy. Trust me, they can really help you understand how to play your role. And if you want a more personalized one-on-one experience, our top tier coaches are available 24/7 to help you anytime that you want it. Whichever option you choose, stop spinning your wheels on your own and get on the fast track to higher elo today. Now, anyway, let's get back on topic, shall we? Our other jungler is Rumble. Just like Mundo, you're fine to play Rumble in lane. In fact, he's still an incredibly broken champion. But in the jungle specifically, too many nerfs have been thrown in his way. In fact, even when he was a dominant pick in pro play and higher elos, his overall win rate wasn't even that good. Now it's sitting between 44 and 45%. Not to just copy and paste what we said about Mundo, but he just can't keep up with the strong early game champions in either ganking or dueling. And when it comes to scaling, other options are better. Play him in lane, or don't play him at all. Or, you know, if you love him in the jungle, then do that. He does have a skin called Rumble in Jungle. Now for the mid lane, we'll be starting off with Azir. It's a pretty well-known fact that mages in general have been struggling in Season 11 as a class, with the exception of a specific pick like Annie and Anivia. And Azir has been one of the absolute worst champions in that class. Think about it. Even when Azir is a strong pick in certain metas, what are the go-to counters? Assassins. And what has been the most dominant mid laners this year? Well, to name a few, some come to mind. Katarina, Akali, Zed, Kiana, Fizz, Echo, Talon, and Diana, which are all assassins. It's basically the most anti-Azir meta that there's ever been. I don't think buffs, even huge ones, will be changing how bad of a pick he is at the moment in solo queue. We'll need an entire meta shift before that happens. And on the topic of assassins, Akali is one that you'll want to stay away from. Akali is suffering, yet again, from the same issue that has plagued her since her rework. Her overall stats have been average or even outright bad, but because of how popular or strong she is at the top of the ladder, she's been hit with a few nerfs. And these nerfs just didn't hit her damage, but they also took away some skill expression in her kit. And I've mentioned this in other videos, but personally, I think nerfing numbers is fine, but nerfing gameplay for a champion and how smooth they feel just feels gross. At the very top of the ladder, she may still be an okay pick, being at least good at specific counter to some laners, but outside of that niche, she's just basically dog water. And I don't think any of us, myself included, are capable of playing Akali at that level. So let's all agree just to stay away from her, like everybody agreed to stay away from me in high school. Moving things down to the bottom lane, we'll be starting off by talking about Lucian. In essence, Lucian is probably the single worst champion in the game. He's simply outclassed in everything that a marksman can do. When it comes to the laning phase, he's a bully, but champions like Tristana and Draven are even better at it. They have more damage, provide a soft bit of CC to go in with their support, and have better snowballing potential and scaling. The biggest reason that Lucian isn't a great pick right now is his lack of range. Having low range means that he has to dash in to deal damage, and with how high damage is across all roles in the current meta, dashing in usually means instant death. So even when he's fed, it's hard to actually use all that gold and carry. The only way Lucian really works is if he's 10-0 coming out of laning phase, but at that point, pretty much any marksman would be able to take over the game. Our last two picks are some of the most nerfed champions due to their prominence in pro play on the entire league roster, and it's kind of understandable. Even with how bad he is statistically at this moment, Lucian is a really oppressive top laner when you have a jungler permanently playing on your side of the map. Attempting to buff him to be a better ADC just makes him even more abusable in solo lanes. That's why Riot is so cautious about buffing him, and other champions like him such as Akali and Tahm Kench. But what about the other end of the spectrum? That brings us to today's question of the day. What champions are good picks in solo queue but bad in pro play? A few come to mind for me, but I want to hear from you. So let us know your answers down in the comments below. I am really looking forward to reading these. Now without further interruption, let's get back onto the topic. Our other no-go for bot lane carry is Kalista. As a disclaimer, I will say that this is specifically if you're playing alone. If you're playing with a duo, where you have some more coordination, Kalista can actually still be a pretty strong pick. Being able to communicate and being on the same page means that you can be more consistently getting a lead, and using that lead to make plays on the rest of the map. But when you're playing with a random support, that's just not going to happen consistently. First of all, there are a lot of other passive supports in the meta at the moment. Being paired with a random is bad enough, but being paired with a random on Lulu, Janna, or Senna is really bad if they're not actively playing aggressively with you. And if you play bot lane, you know players on those champions just tend to sit back quite a bit. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but that's what their champion does. Even if you get somebody who synergizes really well with you, you're relying on them fighting with you at the right time. A lot of solo queue supports tend to go in, use their CC, and then back out, assuming the trade is over. But Kalista requires you to play all in all the time. If your support chickens out, then you're left to the wolves. Furthermore, Thresh, arguably Kalista's best support, is being hit with a pretty sizable nerf this patch. It won't completely ruin him, but it'll definitely take some strength away from the duo. All of this has been talking about supports pairing with Kalista, but there's one more thing to add. Kalista herself is also just kind of difficult to play. Higher mechanical requirements means that there's more room for error. Human error is actually something they have to take into account when measuring how good a champion is. None of us are all faker after all. With low synergy in the current meta, Kalista, who is supposed to dominate lane and snowball a lead, struggles way too much to make her worth picking. Basically, she's just too high risk, medium reward. Now for our supports, we'll be starting off with Sett. Sett is in the same bucket as Azir. In a vacuum, he's not totally an awful champion, but in the current meta, he just can't really do anything as a support. Let's look at all the most popular picks and see why. In order, on patch 11.14, the most popular supports across all ranks have been Lux, Thresh, Lulu, Senna, Leona, and Morgana. Of those champions, 5 of them have one range form of CC to hinder any engage attempts that he makes in lane. Leona, the only one without that, has always been a counter to him as support. If we were in a different meta filled with melee supports that he actually does well against like Galio, Shen, and Gragas, things would be a little bit different. But all supports at the moment render him useless in laning phase, leaving his ADC essentially in a 1v2 situation. Outside of his use as a kill lane support, Sett continues to be pretty useless. His engage is incredibly lackluster because, like in lane, all you can really do is just run at an opponent with his Q and try to land an E. Also, this is because Stridebreaker was nerfed. You can make the argument that his ultimate is good for peeling, but then pretty much every other meta support can peel too, while providing other utility. Finishing off our list, we have Tahm Kench. I do want to say that at higher levels of play, he is actually doing pretty well. Globally, he's near a 51% win rate in Master Plus, and when you look at Korea specifically, his Master Plus win rate is over 54%. So, just like always, the higher quality of the game, the more value that he has as a pick. But remember, we aren't playing in Master Tier Korea. Unless you are, and if that's the case, then please feel free to work at ProGuides as a coach. So while he does technically have a good amount of utility that he can provide, in the solo queue games that you and I are getting into, there's no way our teams are going to make use out of it. Anyway, that's about going to wrap up our things for the 10 worst champions on patch 11.15. Hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you sub to never miss out on our meta guides. And I just want to say a little disclaimer, if you guys love these champions, then by all means, play them. They're pretty balanced, but you're gonna probably have a hard time, but you know what, just do what you love. And remember, doing what you love is what's important in life, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. Maybe in this case, you are hurting your 4 other players, but you know what? If you're good at your champion and you feel confident that you can win with them, who cares? Remember, let us know what you think are the champions that are great in solo queue but suck in pro play down in the comments below. Oh, and one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description as well, where you can go ahead and discuss League further or just hang out and be a part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.